I'm Michael Lee. I am Executive Planning Director at VCCP, which is a creative agency in London.
Mike Bennett, Head of Invention at Studio emtional, which is part of VCCP.
I'm Darren Savage. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Studio emtional.
We've only done a few experiments, but I mean, we deliberately chose interesting ones, which is, what's weirdness doing? Just because, from my experience as a planner and yours, I'm sure, you see so many pieces of research where you're told, get rid of that, it doesn't make sense, or get rid of that bit, it's just freaking people a bit out because it's a bit unusual. And so we wanted to almost show, well, what actually is it doing when we measured this through the System 3 technology? And it was just very interesting because it was doing exactly the opposite to what other research said, which is it's the weird stuff that keeps people interested. This is not just us sort of, trying to be all controversial and self-indulgent. We're still, at the end of the day, talking about what advertising works best. And it's back to what Darren said, weirdness seems to be effective.
Yeah, again, as a creative, it's stuff that you do implicitly, which is storytelling. And classic storytelling is a good arc, surprises, twists and turns, credible characters. And that hasn't actually been rationalised in any meaningful way previously. So it's very hard to have that argument with a client who isn't a natural storyteller and justify why the hobo on a train or whatever the character is in the story is a really good thing to have in there because it keeps the engagement going. And the idea at the moment is that we've got this tool that allows us to make a much more conscious decision, which isn't just our opinions versus theirs, it's actually backed up with some data. And that's what's quite exciting creatively.
I mean, I think the music thing for me is interesting because I think there's loads and loads of research that does actually focus on some of the things that Michael have said, which is the kind of the narrative components, how is the brand manifest in some way, but there's almost nothing which looks at choosing the right piece of music, fitting the right piece of music. And I've done a few bits and bobs there before, but I remember a long time ago working on the NatWest bank account, and Lord, I can't remember his name, came up to me after the meeting and he gave me a tape and he said, Darren, I've got some organ music for you here. And actually over the weekend it recorded a piece of organ music that he was suggesting we put on the next NatWest commercial, and at the time we were trying to contemporise the brand and it was all modern, interesting kind of stuff. And that's typical of what happens. It's a subjective decision and you end up you have an argument saying, well, I don't like that, well, I like that, well, I think that's band cool, I think that band sucks, etc, etc. So we're trying to come up with something, hopefully, that settles some of those arguments and gives you a methodology that lets you more scientifically choose the right piece of music for a specific piece of advertising, rather than saying Coldplay's rubbish for everything. It might be brilliant for some things, we don't know, but we'd test the ad.
I think it was Sorrel who said data is actually going to be more important than creativity. Apologies if that's, please don't sue me. But I think that's sort of the wrong argument. What we're trying to say is actually data can massively support great creativity. Obviously, the role of data is becoming more and more important in terms of that sort of optimising and targeting side of things, and it's helping advertising budgets and investments become more efficient. But I think the idea that it is solely a force to be feared by creatives is, I think, erroneous. It's too crude a distinction. Data bad, creativity good.
Well, it's the same argument that with the talkies. When film was silent, they were always arguing about, oh God, it's going to kill all these careers of actors that can't act. And it's kind of there's a change, because stuff comes in. You can't just have purely ego-driven creative. It has to be measured in some way. But actually, it suddenly adds to the whole rich spectrum of the creative palette. So arguing about whether data is good or bad is like a bit arguing if a computer is good or bad, or if a paintbrush is good or bad. It's just a tool. It just needs to be used in the right way.
Yeah, I think the data thing is interesting, and I can understand why people are talking about it, but there's almost a sense we've got so much data we don't know what to do with it. So you've got this kind of informed bewilderment. And I think what we're trying to do is come up with research which is complementary, but also adds contextual data to existing data to help you interpret it and focus it in the right kind of way. So it's not just generating more data sets for people to look at with confusion and befuddlement. It's hopefully meant to add illumination to the data that you already have.